directors at PSJA Southwest Early College High School. He's been directing the high school level for the past 4 years, and prior he was a director at PSJA Liberty Middle School for 3 years. UIL state appearances in film include the 2018 his narrative film Deaf Mute and the state runner-up Reach Memory. 2019, their one-act play, The Book of Everything, and 2020 state runner-up in film documentary category with Blood, Sweat, and Ink. That was this past year. So reminder, folks, that after the session's over, make sure that you send in your evaluation, and don't forget about your CPE, your attendance, credit, and so forth. And we'll go ahead and start the recording. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Palacios, we'll go ahead and get started. Charlie, take it away.
Thank you, Paula. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in from the comfort of your either home or wherever you're at. I hope everyone's staying safe. Again, my name is Charlie Palacios, Theater Director at PSJA Southwest, and today we're going to be going over UIL film, in specific the category of documentary. Whoops, here we go. So before we get into this, I just want to give an overview of what we're going to be going over. At first, we're going to be talking about our table work, which is the pre-production process that we go through before going out and filming or writing our outline or our script. This is how we get started with the students and creating a ground plan for what is to come throughout the filming process and post-production process. Then we'll be going over specifics in our filming process and what we do at our campus that works for us. We'll be going into details about the equipment that we use. We'll be talking about how we execute the outline that we created beforehand, and any changes that need to be made, and the importance of B-roll filming. And for those of you that don't know specifics about film, this is perfect for you all. And then from there on in, we'll be hitting our post-production process, which is, I believe, the most important part of the film. This is where you start sitting down in the cutting table and really forming your story. Filming part is extremely important, but your editing and your score and your cutting is definitely crucial into your submissions. So before we get into specifics, these are just some, this is taken directly from the UIL film website. These are snippets. I also included the link at the towards the bottom of this slide. If you needed to go over certain rules or certain procedures as far as submission. But these are things to keep in mind throughout. Each school may submit 3 films in the documentary category. And so you, when working through the documentary, you're more than welcome to film as many documentaries as you like in the year. However, you want to pick your best 3. If you're able to film 3 or more, you want to pick your best 3 to submit for UIL. And the time constraint for that is 3 to 7 minutes. You have 7 minutes total with a minimum of 3 to submit, and this includes any credits. So as soon as the judge presses play, the time starts, whether the screen is black or whether there's opening credits or closing credits. It's beginning to end. Only those films produced during the current school year will be considered for submission into the contest. Films produced during the spring or summer months by students currently enrolled at the school are also eligible for the festival held the following spring. And this is big. Keep this in mind for those of you that have a very, very hectic fall semester, which we do, and I'll let you in on that process in a little bit. But I know most of us, if not all of us, are one-act play directors. We do musicals, we do fall shows, on top of so many other things, theater, tech design. And so, submitting films can be, waiting till the last minute can be very hectic. And this rule that's in place definitely helps the students and us out in that you can start filming as soon as the day after awards happen at the state level. So that's a pretty big time frame if you take advantage of it. Sponsors may be on set and help. In fact, that is strongly advised. They may give artistic and tech advice throughout the process. And so that is a common question and an unfamiliarity that sponsors have with this process, that they don't want to do either too much or or they feel like they're doing too much, or they feel like they're doing too little. And so my advice is to look at yourself as a producer. And the students should be coming up or collaborating through this process with you. You are there to guide them. You are there to lead them or put them in the best position for success. It is totally okay to give them advice or say, oh, you may want to shoot that again, or you may want to look at that cut that you made in your editing process, or maybe take a look at the score that you currently have with your film, and I think maybe you can do a little more. Your job is to direct them to success, okay? And of course, the link is there for the UIL Film Participant Guide. If you have specific questions, some of them are already answered on that page, as well as a little more specific rules and guidelines to submit. So our process, before I get into talking about pre-screening, and just to let you know what our program is more or less built like, I have two co-directors, Johnny Trias and Sergio Sauceda, and we have a pretty tight-knit company, not very big. We have a group of about 20, 25 kids that pretty much do everything throughout the year, whether it's acting, tech design, film. They because our company is smaller, they're kind of forced to take off the actor hat and put on the tech hat or the film hat throughout the year. And we do have a production class, but that production class is for everything that we do. We do not have a film class that is geared just for an hour and a half of just filming. And so we have to kind of prioritize our time throughout the year and pick days of when we can focus on film and when we can't, and when it needs to be set on the back burner for a little while. And so these are ways that we're able to start early, and though our hands are full and we have tons on our plates, as well as I know a lot of you all do, these are ways that we kind of keep the ball rolling and we don't let these ideas simmer too long in that back burner. So our objective when we pre-screen, I think I may have jumped an extra. Yes, table work, I'm sorry. So we start with table work, and the timeline, like I said, is the day after film contest ends, the state contest ends. And so literally from that date, you have all summer, the rest of the spring. I know a lot of us are still very invested in one-act play and adjusting our tech design projects. But realistically, you have until that time, until the following, I believe it's January, to submit your films, which is plenty of time. And I know it's easier said than done to start early so you don't have to worry about it later, but just something to keep in mind. And it's something that you can slowly start chipping at. You don't have to start a whole film the day after state awards, but you can start with just discussions and ideas and putting stuff. What we do is we put stuff on Post-it notes, which I'm talking about right now. But watch and learn. So part of our table work process, I don't have a big film education background, and neither do my co-directors, Sergio and Johnny. We are very much of the school of we need to watch and learn, and we continue to learn. And the biggest way we do that is we watch other schools. And we slowly but surely have been becoming a little more successful in our film department that we've more or less started in the last few years. But it started very slow, and it started by watching and learning and trial and error and making mistakes. So while we're learning and we're watching previous documentaries, which you can find on the UIL website, and you can go by year and it'll show you the top 3 finalists, and they're all amazing. It's amazing to see these kids do this kind of work. But when we look at these documentaries, we discuss what kind of roles our students are comfortable taking on, which is, do they feel like they have a good grasp of cinematography, or are they really interested in in scoring the film? Does that really interest them? Do they like splicing, editing, or do they have like editing techniques? A lot of them do, because crazy with YouTube and uploading and TikToks and so forth. So a lot of them already have this technical advantage of putting film and audio together. And so we start with roundtable discussions and brainstorming. We start coming up with ideas, and I like to push the why they're coming up with these ideas. Why do we care? What is the heart of these stories that you are wanting to document or that you're pitching to document? And an example of that is a few years ago, we did a documentary called Beyond the Ring. And the original idea from our students was, let's do a documentary on our fall show process. And I said, we as director said, okay, we can do that. That would be a great documentary. It would be fun. A lot of people could relate, but a lot of people know of this process. They do it as well. And so it might be easy for them to tune out. Or, I always like to tell them, when you're on Facebook or when you're on Instagram, when you're on Twitter and you're scrolling, a lot of the times you're scrolling past videos, and every once in a while you'll stop. And before you know it, you watched a 6-minute video, 5-minute video, 8-minute video, or sometimes longer. And there's a reason why you stop and finish those videos. It's because they've reached you somehow. You've invested in the story. And so my challenge to our students is always, how do you invest your potential audience into this story? What about the fall show? And that particular year, we were doing the elaborate entrance of Chad Deity, where they had to learn how to professionally wrestle in a live wrestling ring. And so I pushed that question because I knew there was more to the story than just we're doing a fall show. There was depth to that idea. And so the documentary started as, let's do a documentary on our fall show process, and we added depth to it. And the 7-minute documentary became students learning to wrestle like professional wrestlers for their fall show. And so that was the focus, and it had a little more depth, and it to me as an audience member was a lot more interesting. So these ideas, we're pushing them, and and it's kind of like like sales pitches. Students are sales pitching their stories, and once some land with some depth and some heart, or there's a lot of challenge in it, or there's something to overcome in the process, we put those on Post-it notes, and we post them around our black box, which is where we meet daily. And this helps us as directors check in with them, because it's very easy with our schedules to well, it's not due until January, it's October, it's November, we'll worry about it when we get there. But I'll tell you, and I'll go over it later, do not sit on film, because it'll bite you in the hiney. So yes, these Post-its, and you don't have to do Post-its, you can do a clear and visual reminder that help you, whether it's on the board, whether it's on computers, whether it's on apps, however you feel comfortable. But these Post-it notes are daily reminders, and I'll be sitting there and, oh, hey, Christopher, did you follow up on this story? Did you ask this subject so-and-so questions? Is there a lead? Is there really a story there? And that's how we slowly start progressing our pre-production, is making sure these Post-its are worthy of staying on the wall. And if we investigate some of these stories that we've pitched and they're not really going anywhere, we take them off. Students are encouraged to find stories within arm's length. This leads to more flexibility due to greater access to local archives of media and articulate cooperative spokespersons. This is just a suggestion. You can, of course, document anything that you feel is worthy of people watching, or it doesn't have to be so close to home. But there's so many advantages of creating documentaries with people that are willing to work with you, because they either know you, they know the students, they love your program, or maybe they've been through the program, they're family members. It leads to a lot more, a bigger cooperative process, and it's much easier to engage with them. They usually feel a little more comfortable because you're not so much strangers, and you can normally get a lot more out of them as far as archive. They're more than likely willing to share more of their own personal media with you, which always enhances your documentary. And so the ideas that are chosen will likely determine the student's role as director. So at the end of the process, if there's, you know, maybe 4 or 3 post-its left on the wall, usually the directors that are chosen, which are the student directors, are the ones that pitch the idea and that have gone out and have done some field work and researched and.
Yeah, thank you.
So then we start pre-screening. And this is, we didn't start doing this with our first set of documentaries, and we learned to do this after our first year of really attempting documentary. And this is pretty much establishing your outline before you go out and film. When we pre-screen, your objective is to get a feel for what the story outline will be, and feel of the subjects you'll be documenting. You interview your subjects cold, of course, but this is not, unless you'd like it to be, but you don't have to. When we do it, we don't film it, we don't record them unless we do it for our sake to look back and create our outline on, because we haven't really formed our story yet. So like this picture here that I use in this slide, this is our students talking with our main subject in our last documentary, Christopher. In order to be prepared for day 1 of filming, we wanted to know if there was even a story to document. And so we met with him at his shop, and we went on a closed day, thankfully. And so he had all the time for us. And he sat with our students and he talked to them about his life, how he got started in tattooing, you know, what he always envisioned his career as a kid growing up. And we found more and more stories that, you know, we got hours worth of stories from him. And then from there, we sat and we created an outline of, okay, we have so much meat from this story, but we need 7 minutes. So from there, we start creating an outline for our day of filming. When we actually interview him with a camera, with audio, with all the tech set up, we have an outline, more or less, an outline of questions that we want him to answer in order to, you know, engage us in that story that we're trying to tell. Try to find someone who's well-spoken and not too camera shy. This will help you on your day of filming. We have had previous, you know, subjects or documentaries where, you know, and everyone at first is a little camera shy and they'll giggle and they'll laugh and they'll say, well, let's take it again. But the day can become long if they're doing that for an hour straight, you know, and they're saying, let's redo it. One, you're wasting a lot of battery life, storage space, and your subject's going to tend to get tired, and so are your kids. And so, you know, try to get someone who's a little comfortable, you know, speaking on camera or speaking with your students. And it's better to have too much content than lack thereof. During your pre-screening process, have your students ask as many questions as they can. Get as much out of your subject as possible so you can really shape out your story. When we first approached him, we didn't know that he took on the shop, which is one of the most popular shops in the Valley, because of his boss that brought him in and worked for 13 years, passed away. And no one knew how to run the business but Chris, because he worked under him for so long. And so the shop fell in his lap, and it was up to him to continue, you know, the shop's success. And that alone was, whoa, we just thought you were a worker here. You own the shop, and because of all this, that's the story. That's interesting. So yeah. And like I said, find the meat. Analysis of the interview that takes place to find depth in the story and to set an outline. Like once you had that pre-screen interview, go over it and try to either record it, or whether it's a back and forth emails, whether it's messages, whether it's like a Zoom, which is extremely popular now, whether it's like a Zoom meeting with them, get that recorded so that way when you are establishing your outline, you can always rewatch or reread or go back and really figure out where you want your 7 minutes spent, what needs to be in your film, and what can kind of be left out. Again, what makes the story unique and why are you telling this story? With as much information as you get, it's very easy to go off on tangents, and it's very easy to include stuff that looks great or that sounds great, but doesn't really further along the story. And, you only have 7 minutes. So be sure to stick to that outline and make sure that your story is cohesive. Be sure to have a clear beginning, middle, and end for your outline. And keep in mind, what does the audience need to know for your story to land? This will also make sure you have filmed enough content for your spokesperson. So when you gather that outline, make sure that you're preparing the audience for success in feeling for your documentary. You may know a whole lot more than you are including, and you may be taking it for granted, you and your team and your students, because you've been around it and you've been researching it and you've been talking to this person. But remember that your audience has zero idea of the story you tell them, and their only base is to go off of what you're showing them and what they're hearing. So be sure to set your audience up for success with what they need to know. Plan ahead. Scout your location before filming. And so this happens, of course, after the pre-screen process of that pre-interview with your subject. Try to avoid scheduling a date and just going and filming and saying, we'll wing it and we'll figure it out. Because we've done that before too. We're not experts in the film, in the filming process, but we've made mistakes that have thankfully taught us some lessons on how to be better. And so scout your location before filming. Go and get a feel of what the space feels like, what it looks like, what the lighting's like, how much equipment you'll need, how many bodies is too much bodies. This shop that we particularly went to this past year was kind of tight. And so taking a team of 10 to 15 kids was not gonna be ideal. Hey, pup. Sorry, I have my 3-year-old here. And so avoid filming spontaneously. Get an idea. Hey, pup. Why are you sad? Okay, it's okay, Pop. Come on. I'll be there in a bit. I'll be there in a bit, Dad. Uh-oh. I hope I got my little boy got some cue points for this presentation. Get an idea of what B-roll footage you have at your disposal. Ask for as much access as possible. So, when we went to this shop, we specifically looked at what can we film as far as B-roll. And when I talk about B-roll, I mean the film that is, or the footage that the audience is looking at while your audience is talking. I'm sorry, not your audience, but your subject. Your subject is going to be talking subjects will be talking throughout the whole documentary. And you want to avoid just having a still shot on them for too long. It gets a little monotonous. And so what you'll do is you'll include B-roll footage. And this is like your action shots, shots of what is happening. You want to try to mix your footage with, or to correlate with what your subject is talking about. And so ensure you take note of possible film equipment. So yes, when you're at your location, you want to, note, we want to use our drone here because we have this cool establishing shot of the shop that can look really cool. Make sure to bring the drone, or, make sure to bring a couple of LED lights because it's not very well lit in this office. And this is where we want to shoot our interview. And set up your shot with your subject beforehand. Again, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but kind of frame him where you think where you want him sitting within his environment. We had him in his office, which looked really cool, all sorts of colors in his shop. And so we did that beforehand. That way, when it came to the day of filming, we weren't second guessing ourselves and, students weren't, let's try this, with our subject waiting and just, because we're on his time, or wherever you will be filming. If you're at location, more than likely you'll be on someone else's time. And so you want to be respectful of that. And so equipment, while on equipment, this is the equipment that we happen to use most of the time. This is what we use for our past documentary, Blood, Sweat, and Ink. And these are just suggestions, especially for those who aren't very film savvy. those who don't have a lot of, or don't have a big old budget to invest in big old studio equipment. These we found to be very useful and very professional looking. Our camera we used a couple of iPhone 11 Maxes. Our students, I had one and a couple of my students had one, had some as well. And so with the iPhone, I think 11 and above, it shoots in 4K quality. And anything below that, you know, from the last few years, it shoots in 1080p, which is HD quality, which looks great on film anyway. And so the advantage of using an iPhone or iPhones was that multiple subjects in this production had one. So we weren't limited to just one big old expensive camera. But we had 3 students walking around the shop filming B-roll footage with the same type of technology, the same type of resolution of camera. And so nothing really looked mismatched. And this is where we normally shoot all of our films on, is an iPhone, the latest version of an iPhone if possible, just because it looks great and the students are more familiar with their phones than they are anything else. They're in their palms all day, every day. And so you'd be surprised how well they know how to use and maneuver these cameras. But when talking about iPhones, if you do happen to go the iPhone route, be sure beforehand that you have plenty of storage. We've run into the problem before where we had our iPhones and one of them wasn't able to film anymore because the storage was full. And so on that, either be prepared to have a laptop or a hard drive on set, and so that way you can constantly dump footage from your phone, or just make sure that there are plenty of storage beforehand. And after each day of filming, just dump that footage out and clear your phone up so that way you have more to film with. The second picture here is a handheld gimbal. Those of you that aren't familiar with them, they're really, really cool pieces of technology. They run about, on Amazon, about $120, which is not so bad considering the level of professionalism it adds to your film. What it is, it's a Steadicam, or it creates a stabilizer for your phone. And so you hook it up to your Bluetooth and it syncs up, and you can move your camera around and it avoids all the shakiness and it makes it glide, and it's very smooth, very user-friendly. If you're not very big on technology, a student, I'm sure, will know how to use it or figure it out in about 30 minutes. It's very user-friendly, very easy. And it's what we use in all of our narratives and documentaries. And it's very portable. It's very easy. It comes in a small little bag or a case, and it's very mobile, very good for getting up and going and filming, and then stopping without having a big old setup and takedown. The third picture here is again, this we found, or you can find on Amazon. They're portable LED lights. This brand it's called Newer, and it's an LED kit. These provide an awesome source of light or what we use them for was during our interview. However, they are battery operated. They're wireless, which is great. They're very mobile, very easy to move around. Very beneficial. However, they run on battery, and so just like your phones and just like your gimbal, you want to make sure that the battery is charged, because throughout the process, as it loses battery, the light just won't give out or go out. It'll slowly dim, and that happened in our past documentary, Blood, Sweat, and Ink. And if you pay attention, we try to correct it as much as possible in our editing process, but some interview shots are a little brighter than others, or some are a little grainier because we try to add artificial light. And so that's something that, we always make mistakes and we always learn. And so that's something that we learned and we put in our pocket. And next time we film, we know everything's always 100% charged before we start. Lapel mics and boom mics. I didn't include a picture of these only because we did not use them. And now we know. But we used audio just off of stock, off of whatever we were recording with. And the audio came out fine. It was acceptable. It was okay. We didn't get any comments on it, but compared to the audio quality of a lapel mic, which you attach to your subject, or a boom mic, which a crew member holds for them, the audio comes out far superior. And so I would suggest using so. But if you're very, very tight on a budget, that may be something that you don't go ahead and purchase. But and I'll talk about it later. The most important things of your film are that the audience can follow along visually and follow along by hearing. And as soon as one of those gets confusing, it's hard for them to. And then this last piece of equipment here that looks like a cool little jet was our drone. And we use these for 2 shots in the film. And they were both establishing shots of outside the shot. They're very, very cool, but the drones are expensive. We happen to slowly be building our inventory as far as film. And so this is pretty much what you see here is what we have at our disposal, and we work with what we have. But all this stuff is great. The most expensive thing is the drone. It's not necessary. You can make a great film without a drone. Don't think you need to spend tons and tons of money to make a great film. Remember, making a great film or a documentary is more story than it is flashy tricks. But they're nice, and you can go on Amazon and look at prices or go through different electronic outlets. The one we happened to use was DJI Mavic Pro, and it was a platinum edition, and that came with all the bells and whistles. It's the most expensive piece of equipment that we use, and it was around $1,000. Like I said, we just started implementing this into our films. It is not something that you need to go out and buy. I would first invest on your visual and audio quality. Executing your outline and filming the interview. So the outline that you prepared beforehand is what you're going to be using as your script the day of filming. Unlike a play or a narrative film, you don't have a set of dialogue that's already pre-written and a scene that tells you where it takes place and what the mood is. You have to create it yourself. And so that's where documentary gets a little bit taxing, but it's where you have so much creative freedom. Follow your outline. Make sure that your students, when they're starting to film these subjects, make sure that they stick to the story that they've prepared so that you don't get too off topic and you don't get, okay, we filmed an hour's worth of footage. This is great, but we didn't follow the outline. We don't have what we need. Ensure that your subject footage is well lit and that your audio is acceptable. Like I said, what makes a great film is that you can visually follow it and that you can hear it throughout clearly. Make sure changes are made to depict your expectations. Don't hesitate to get it right. This was, and we ran into this we ran into this the past few documentaries where what the subject was trying to get across, it took him either a couple of tries or a couple of sentences, or he was stuttering. And the content, what he was saying was great, but it didn't come out so naturally, or it took, there was awkward pauses, or there was, giggles and looks to the side or at the crew. Don't hesitate to say, hey, what you said was great. We want to get that again. You don't have to change the content. Let's just clean it up a little bit. You're not forcing a script and you're not making anything up. You don't want to make your subject feel like he's lying or that he's creating a story. Encourage them and say, hey, have your students or train them or coach them and say what you said on camera was great. We just need you to clean it up, or we just need you to try it again. Let's just try it again. Let's just ask the same question and same response, and try to capture genuine emotions and natural delivery. Encourage more conversation to take place while you have time with your subject. Remember, it's better to have too much content than lack thereof. And so what I always, and our students are so enthusiastic and so spontaneous, they're very good at this, but what you want to establish in this interview-like setting when you're filming of course, when you watch these documentaries on camera, and the very dramatic ones, they're very serious and they're very timid, and it's very, drama. But create a relaxed atmosphere for them. You don't want to make them feel like they're sweating and that they have to, get everything perfectly right the first time. You would rather them be in a state of mind where they feel like they're telling stories, because that's what we're doing. We're telling and documenting stories. And so I kind of like to have the students create or establish the environment as if, hey, let's ask questions. Let's just ask questions, and you just respond. And then that's how we're going to record. You're going to be telling stories to us. And if we want a little more of that story, we'll ask. And don't feel like you need angles and dramatic pauses, and those will come naturally. Those will come from your, the heart of what you're getting from your subjects. But create a very talkative atmosphere, a very conversational atmosphere that will relax your subject, and you'll get much better content that way. B-roll filming, and I have some examples here to show you, but in case, and these examples are for, some of you may have read B-roll, I know what it is, you don't need to go over it, but I want to touch on a little bit of everything, especially for those directors or sponsors that are first time, that want to tackle film, but they're a little too worried about getting their feet wet. All this content that I'm providing is hopefully to give you a little taste of everything so that you feel comfortable trying. Record footage that coincides with the content of your outline. B-roll footage allows you to splice recorded interviewee audio to create manipulated flow and gather as much media about your documentary as possible. Dig. And you'll see this plenty on the news. They'll say, well, here in local Edinburgh, flooding has taken a rise where, so on and so forth. And it'll cut from the news anchor or the subject, and it'll cut to a street that's flooded, and it'll cut to cars passing. That's B-roll footage. The video that you layer on top of the audio, which is your subject speaking or your storytelling. These are very short. You're not going to watch the whole film, but these are just examples of B-roll footage that we've used in 2 of our documentaries. This first one was in Beyond the Ring, which is our story of a professional wrestler coming to train our students how to wrestle for the elaborate entrance of Chad Deity. And the second is B-roll footage that we used in our past documentary, Blood, Sweat, and Ink.
Jim Justice here from Wrestling Revolution. I've been in the business now for 18 years. Started off in Anoka, Minnesota. I've wrestled in Tennessee, Oklahoma, and throughout the state of Texas. We started a company here about 9 years ago in McAllen, Texas, called the Wrestling Revolution. I do a school there where I train. I heard of the opportunity of coming over here and teaching my craft to the boys, and I had to jump at that.
See this professional wrestler in our wrestling gym attacking the mat, taking bumps, falling so hard, running into turnbuckles like he's some sort of rag doll. It looks painful.
This fool is for real. One of the biggest things we do here, other than safety, is making sure that we train every day to make sure that our craft is correct and we look good in the ring. And one of those things that we do all the time is we work on our bumps and our rolls constantly. Our bumps are one of the most important things because it's something that we do in every match. Down, hands here, and when you go back, the most important thing is chin to chest. You want to protect your neck from not hitting the ground and having whiplash. You want your arms to hit the mat at the same time your whole back does. Your feet are going to come up like someone's pulling the rug, so it should look like this. You guys ready? It's your turn. You guys getting in or what?
The first time I took a bump, it hurt. It was hard to get up. I was laughing, but I was also in pain. It was horrible. At that moment, you kind of understand and you want to learn how to do it the correct way. You start to listen to everything your direction is telling you. People have done this before. Because you understand that if you don't do it right, you can get hurt. There is no give on that mat. You hit it, you're done. The mat was no joke. Bump after, bump after, bump after, bump
All right, and so that was the example of the B-roll footage that we used in Beyond the Ring. And as you can see, the shots of the professional wrestler introducing himself, talking about his history, coincided with the footage that was being shown of video that he provided us to use, which was actual work that he had in front of a live audience, which was great B-roll footage instead of just listening to him, being able to mix in that video and really getting an audience a chance to really see what he does rather than just listen to stories that he's telling. And then again, the uncertainty with the students and their gradual process into training with him, them talking about running into turnbuckles as they're happening is very good timing. And so our students had a very good feel for the B-roll layering of that process. I do have a little bit more of an example with Blood, Sweat, and Ink. For now, I'll keep going just for time's sake. And if there's maybe a little bit of time at the end, we can always go back. But our editing process, editors should be part of the process from the beginning. And I am as a sponsor, I'm very big on this because I've done it both ways. And it's always harder when an editor is not on set filming with the team. Just because that their main role takes place after filming doesn't mean that they can't be there. And I strongly suggest that they do. Because what happens when an editor is not on set, after all the filming's done, you'll have, let's say, an hour's worth of interview, an hour and a half worth of interview. You only taking 7 minutes, remember. And then you have an hour and a half of B-roll footage, action shots, and your editor was not on set. You give him a huge library of video and audio that you took, and you say, hey, put it together. The editor's got to go through every single part of the interview. He's got to go through every single B-roll shot and find, first of all, the story all over again. But then he's got to piece it together himself. Or if he's sitting with the director, and the director is going to have to sit with the editor and pretty much go frame by frame or film cut by cut, explaining, oh, this is why we asked him this, or this is why he's talking about this right now. This is why we filmed this part of the building. As opposed to when you have an editor as a part of the process, once the editing process is ready to get started, they can just jump in and go. They were a part of the interview. They were a part of the filming of the B-roll process. They were a part of the pre-screening process, and they're invested. And so it cuts honestly about a day or two's worth of just figuring out and getting back on the same page with the filming process. And about editing software that we used, there are many different platforms you can use to edit. There is iMovie, there is Adobe Premiere, Final Cut Pro. I know there are many more. We use, because like I said, we don't have big, strong film backgrounds. We're getting a little more comfortable with the process. But we have been using iMovie. And iMovie is free. It's very easy to use. You can get the hang of it in about a day or less. Students probably already know how to use it very well if you ask them. It's accessible. It's very easily accessible on your phone if you happen to have an iPhone, or on computers. Adobe Premiere does cost. I don't have the exact cost of it, and I've never used it before. It's a lot more intricate than iMovie, but you also have a lot more freedom, and you have a lot more freedom that you can create with your texts and your splicing or merging of scenes. And there's also Final Cut Pro. I know a student in the past used Sony Vegas, and that's what he was comfortable with. And so before you decide on one, or decide to learn one so you can teach your students how to use one, try to gauge your company and see what they already use. And if they're comfortable using one over the other, or if they have another editing software, encourage them to use that, and to teach others how to use it, and to teach you how to use it. Because it's not really until you start editing or become an editor is when you see how a process can be easier when filming. Provide plenty of time for your editing process. A rushed film is a sloppy film. When near completion, rewatch your film multiple times, looking for key elements each time. And I know this is very easy to say, and I should practice what I'm preaching, but do not wait to the last second to create your film or for the editing process. Filming, if you're prepared, if you follow similar steps or the steps that I provided with, the pre-screening and the outline, filming should only take, max 2 days. We did a day of 1 day for interviewing our subject, and then we got about another day's worth of footage just on B-roll footage, and we were able to get in and out that way. But that helps your filming process, cut down, as opposed to going unprepared and having to go back every day and, hey, we missed something, hey, we need another part of your interview, or we need to shoot more. You have more time for your editing process. And also, if your editor is feeling rushed and your editor is on a time crunch and, we only have, 25 hours and you're barely on the opening credits, they're not really able to feel the film out, especially in a documentary. In a documentary, when you get an hour and a half's worth of footage, the editor, along with the director, is creating a story and merging scenes together from scratch. It's a lot harder than narrative or something that's scripted already for you, because the editor and the storytellers have to gather so much, or 7 minutes worth of gold in the hour or however long you've interviewed your subject. And so there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of emotions that you're able to access with that, but it's very intricate. And when you're, like I said, rewatch your film multiple times, looking for key elements each time. Encourage your editor and be a part of that process. But every time you rewatch it and they say, well, I'm done, it's done, say, okay, let's watch it, and let's focus. Let's watch it for what it is, but let's focus on the audio and make sure that the audio starts and ends perfectly with each beat. Make sure that the levels coincide with the dialogue, and make sure that nothing is too hot or too cold. And so watch it once just for the audio's sake. And then if there are anything that needs work, make some notes while you're watching. Watch it again and look for cinematography. Watch it as many times as it takes to look at all the aspects that you want clean in your film. And so you may have to watch it 7, 8, 9 more times than you'd ever want to. But this gives you access to comfortably zone in on each part of your film, making sure that every part that you'll want to get across to your audience and your judges is up to par. Your score. I believe your score is the heart and soul of your film. You can make so many people feel exactly what you want them to feel without having to say or your subject to tell them anything, just by playing the right song. As you know, there are copyright laws, and you can get permission from copywritten material if you, of course, get permission. But more than likely, you're going to be using royalty-free music. So what we use is there's plenty of royalty-free music on YouTube. There's endless libraries and genres and kinds, and so that's the route that we go. I know that there's websites that also provide royalty-free music, although sometimes you have to pay for those. The easiest route that we found was YouTube. Don't settle on the first option and don't rush the mood. But just because it's readily available on YouTube does not mean that the first royalty-free song is going to fit your project. And so it takes long, sessions of sitting in front of YouTube and next, and searching, ridiculous royalty-free titles like royalty-free emotional songs that make you cry almost a little. And there's a song for that, I'm sure, somewhere. And, you'll go through endless libraries, but matching them with your mood is what you want to ensure always. Do not sit in silence. A big part of the film is music throughout. And even if it's barely audible, it creates a comfort for the audience. It's telling them without shoving it down their throat that this is how you should be feeling, and this is the route that we're going as storytellers. And so they subconsciously start getting on board with you because of the music that you're providing. And so try not to sit in silence, you know, I mean, unless it's a very, pivotal, dramatic moment and you're purposely doing it, go for it. But you get the picture. And score is the unsung hero of the film. That's the one thing that I'll go back and tell students over and over. It's cut great, the score needs work. I know what you're trying to make me feel here because of what you're showing me and what I'm hearing with your subject, but the audio is not enhancing that. Make sure that your score enhances always and never takes away. And time to cut. The story of our one-act play season lives. Watch your final product and time it. And if you happen to be under 7 minutes the first time and you don't need any more editing, that's amazing. Go buy a lottery ticket and pull out the 4-leaf clover out of your pocket, because that's great, but it almost never happens. It's just like one-act play. The first perfect run through, and what time was it? Oh, it was 48:90. Oh, or 48:90, 48:40. Oh, great. You very, very rarely will you hit under, 39:40 your first time. Same with film. When determining what to cut, consider timing your beats. And this is big. When students would show me the final product and said, I'm at 9 minutes and 30 seconds, but there's nothing to cut. Everything needs to be there. Well, I'd say time your beats. Every part of your film, specifically, you're establishing 30 seconds of the beginning of your documentary, your exposition to your subject and your story, the conflict, how long is each part? And you'll start to say, oh, well, my establishing is 4 minutes and it rushes my ending. So cut from there. That the time of your film and the time of your beats will tell you what needs to be cut and what's too long. I tend to watch it like a clean slate every time, and this is hard. And this is something I tell the students is really put yourself in the mindset of an audience member every time you rewatch your film. Don't watch it and go, yeah, this part's next, and it's great because that was a great shot, but okay, look, what's the next part? Always try to put yourself in the mindset of, okay, this is all new to me. How am I feeling every time, or this new time of watching it? And treat it like, and I bring one-act play into this a lot, but because I'm a one-act play director, as well as I know a majority of you are as well, and so this is something I connected with. But treat it like a one-act play. What does the audience need to know when you're trying to cut under 7 minutes? Watch it again and again. Rewatching your film helps you pinpoint any awkward moments, any awkward pauses. You can trim a good 20 seconds just by cutting small pauses. You cut small pauses under B-roll. That's where B-roll saves you. You can cut that pause and you can save an easy 20, 30 seconds just getting those awkward pauses out of there. Pre-screen your film to classes and peers if time permits. This is also a great reason why to get a little ahead of the game, not to be, don't be editing, 2 hours before submission time. But if time permits, what's great about film before submitting it is in your theater classes or your speech classes or your production classes, whatever you happen to be teaching, make it a part of your lesson. This is a film, a documentary that our students worked on here, and we want to get your feedback as an audience member. What parts are a little uncomfortable, or as visually, or in a sense, in an audio sense, or what didn't you grasp from the story? Were there any unanswered questions? Pre-screening towards your peers and other people in your department is a really great advantage you have in the film aspect. And submission. Avoid submitting at 11:58 p.m. Practice what you preach, Charlie. I know. We've been in that process where we're sweating bullets and our hearts are beating and we have to submit. It's 11:57. And then YouTube crashed and YouTube's not working. Wi-Fi went down. All the things that can go wrong will go wrong if you decide to submit in those last few minutes. Realize that it does take time for your film to export. And so that's not just a click of a button on YouTube or Vimeo or whatever you happen to be using. It's a process. It's compressing your footage. So on that, make sure you do it with plenty of time. Make sure you export your film in the highest quality possible. Thankfully, we submitted, a day before this past year, but we caught that we submitted it in 480p for some reason. And so the quality wasn't as great as it was shot in. It was shot in, 1080p quality. And that wasn't what it was looking like. It was looking pretty grainy and pixelated. And so thankfully, because we had that time before midnight submission, I was able to contact, of course, Luis, and I said, hey, we're still before midnight. Our student just happened to submit a wrong quality version of it. It's the same film, it's just the quality is a lot better. It was in 1080p rather than 480p. And so, of course, permitted it on time. But had we waited till 11:58, that could have made or break our film. YouTube and Vimeo are your go-to platforms. Those are these, and what I mean by this is what you'll be uploading your videos onto. So you can either create a school or a department YouTube page or a Vimeo page, and this is where you can upload your films. And the link that YouTube or Vimeo gives you is what you'll be providing judges in your submission sheet. So that way they can watch your film and judge it from there. Videos can be left for the public or private. If you are choosing for your films to remain private, please provide the password necessary for your judges to view and score the film in a timely manner. What I mean by this is you have the option on YouTube whether to let anyone access your film and watch it, which doesn't change the competition. Once films are submitted, they're submitted. And I love our favorite thing as a department is we go and we watch all the submissions. We search 2020 UIL film, submission, documentary film or narrative or animation. And it's awesome to watch live all these videos pop up, and we start seeing what's out there this year and what we're competing against. And so you can remain to keep it private, and only the judge will have access to it, and you and your department, whoever has the password. However, be sure that when you submit your film, you provide the password to access that film. I judge films as well in the contest, and there are plenty of times when the film is set to private, and that's fine, but I don't have the password to watch it. And so it disrupts the critiquing and the judging process, especially when they're kind of, the judge is in the flow. They have the setup. They're ready to go. And so make sure always, if it's on private, you have that password provided. Of course, the judge will have to contact Luis or the office or someone to get that. And I say Luis because Luis had the UIL film aspect. But you can always get them the password, but you just want it already readily accessible for them. Breathe, relax. At the end of this process, or throughout this process, make it fun and make it creative. And the best way you can avoid that is waiting until, film's due in a week and we got to submit 3 narratives or 3 documentaries or 3 animations or all of them. We have 12 films to submit and we haven't started. That's not going to be a fun process for you, for the students, or for the subjects that you'll be working with. Give your students a creative fighting chance. Make this fun for the people that you happen to be documenting or that you happen to ask to act in your narratives. Allow the process and the creativity to breathe. Don't procrastinate. And I know that's easy to say. I know once the year starts, it's like foot on the pedal. You have a million things, shows, projects, competitions. And so I understand. And we've been in the boat too, plenty of times where we're there the night before, the night of. I understand. But if you're going to be working late, make that the final fine tunings of the editing process. But like I said, take advantage of that time that you have right after film state ends until January. You know, you can film in May, or you can film in June, in the summer, and you can choose to get all that footage, take a break, let your summer breathe, let your kids breathe. But then the editing process can start up again in another month or so. And so, yeah, that's advice I need to follow as well. You know, I know it's not easy, but just think about that. Slowly chipping away at the mountain that is UIL film or documentary or whatever category you happen to be submitting for. Slowly chip away at it. Take a break from the screen in post-production. And I say this because the students' faces throughout the process, they're like on little sleep. They don't want to stop because they're motivated and they're excited, but they've been looking at their screen the editors have been looking for 4 or 5 days straight, and they haven't slept, and they have 3 monsters lined up and a Frappuccino. And, you know, as much as they want to keep working on it, you make them take breaks, make them breathe. You want them fresh, you want them rested, and continue to seek inspiration throughout the process. Just because you've started on the film or on the filming process or the post-production editing process doesn't mean that you can stop or that you should stop learning. It's especially important and I have my editors watch documentaries that I'll suggest to them all the time. And I'll say, hey, check out this documentary, but check out the audio, or check out the score, or check out the cinematography. It's great. I just did that recently with Unsolved Mysteries. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's great. But the cinematography in that particular show is great. And so I'll often suggest, hey, check this out. It's great. They have some awesome techniques. We can utilize this, utilize that. And especially in the editing process when they're stumped, you know, I don't know how to connect this scene, or I don't know, you know, is it okay for them to sit in footage and audio or in music and, you know, no one's talking, you know, figure out how you feel and how they feel when they watch others, and, you know, how things land for them. And I believe I'm ready, or we're ready for the questioning aspect of this. This is my contact info. If you have any questions that we may not get to answer here, or if there's something more in depth that you'd like to know or ask me about, please feel free to email me. This is my work email, or if you have me on social media, or you want to find me there, if that's easier for you, I don't mind. But this is where you can reach me.
Awesome. Hey, Charlie, Elizabeth, do we have questions?
Yeah, we have a couple questions. So the first one was about camera technique for interviews, like the camera placement specifically, and especially if you get the sense the person might be a little bit uncomfortable on camera. Like, do you have them sort of look directly at the camera, a little bit off axis?
Yeah, that's a good question. I found that those that aren't, looking directly at the camera is a little more personable for the audience, especially when they're recounting a personal story. However, that's where we found that subjects get more the nerves start acting up, and it's easy for them to lose themselves or to talk in circles or to laugh. We've utilized both looking directly at the camera, and then in Blood, Sweat, and Ink, we had our subject who is well-spoken, but we had him kind of looking off into his left, and we set him up kind of like in a 3/4 shot, so he was a little bit predominantly on the left side of the screen. And this was comfortable for him, he said, because he wasn't either staring at a red light, which is like the record button, or someone holding the iPhone in our case. And he was kind of able to stare off and kind of daydream and kind of just go off, and his stories became better and more elaborate that way. But there are several different techniques. We've used both. In this past one, like I said, though, our tattoo artist was looking off screen, and we got, I believe, more great storytelling aspect out of that, as opposed to the documentary I showed you earlier, Beyond the Ring. They were looking directly at the camera, but I felt that there was more of a connection with the audience about recanting their crazy experiences and sometimes comical experiences in the ring.
Great. And there was another question about the team makeup, like, and I think specifically like crew designations.
Right. So
and do you use grips? Like, how many kids are kind of working on these?
yeah, so we kind of, you know, like I said, we don't have very heavy film backgrounds, and we kind of learn as we go. Our crews or our sets are most of the time minimal. What you saw in that picture that I used, let me see if I can find it here. But what you saw in that picture earlier, this was our crew for this past documentary. These two, he handled, the student on the very right handled the cinematography aspect of it, and the student on the left was our designated interviewer, if you will, and he was big on asking questions and getting the story out of Chris. He was very, very curious, and so he got a lot of great information from Chris. And then our student in the middle handled our lights, our LEDs, like, and our drone as well. He flew our drone. And so, you know, if you go to our equipment page, it was very minimal stuff that we used. It was, you know, a couple of iPhones, the gimbal, and these portable LED lights. And, you know, the students, and then of course, our one student, Leah, was able to work the drone for us for that time. But you know, other documentaries may allow and may require bigger sets or bigger amount of kids or bigger students. So it just, you feel that out as a sponsor, you know, what's needed, or if you'd like more students on set to learn, you know, especially with the iPhone. What I like about using iPhones is that the more students that have iPhones, the more that can practice with their own camera on set filming. This set just happened to be very tight. The shop was very small, and we were filming during working hours. You know, clients were getting work done, and so we didn't want, you know, set of 20 kids plus workers and clients getting work on it all in one small tight space.
Great. Those were the two questions I think for you that came in. Another one was one I could answer. I responded to through chat. So if you're that person, you can check in chat, and I'll throw it back to Paula.
All right, Charlie, that was excellent. I didn't know that your kids did all their work like through the iPhones and stuff. I think it's fascinating. So, well, Charlie, thank you very much. Folks, if you have questions for him, please, you know, he said, gave you his email address. Please send them to him or send them to make or Elizabeth, and we'll make sure that Charlie gets those questions. Charlie, thank you for being our last session for the summer. I hope you enjoy your summer. Be safe. I know you guys got hit pretty hard down in the valley, so take care. Folks, thank you for joining us. Again, if you have any questions about any of our UIL theater contests, please send us an email, drop us a line. All right. You guys have a wonderful weekend. And Charlie, thank you very much. All right.
Very much. Bye-bye.
All right. I'll take care.